Good morning, everybody. We're here at the National Tropical Weather Conference. This is NTWC Live, brought to you by USAA, South Padre Island Convention and Tourist Bureau, and Plylox Hurricane Clips. Today, our special guest is Austin Anderson, and it is all a team effort. Tim Smith is not with us today, but Bill Reed and I will try to make the show work for you. And so for now, we'll switch this over into Bill, and he can introduce our guest for today.
Very good. Thank you, Alex. And we're 2 days past the official end of hurricane season, and thankfully there's nothing imminent on the tropics. So I'll go right into our guest, who of course will be talking about his aspects of the season. As you all know, we had a record-setting season for 2020, and everybody involved in it was busy. Today we have insight on the season from a network level cameraman who was at ground zero for most of the 12 hurricanes that made U.S. landfall in 2020, including Ada, which made 2 landfalls in Florida. Austin Anderson is our guest, coming from Austin, Texas. The city was not named after him, but maybe he was named after it. We'll find out. He will show us some pictures and video and describe experiences from behind the scenes while working live with the on-camera meteorologist at the Weather Channel. Austin has been a network news freelance cameraman for 25 years, working with NBC, the Weather Channel, CNN, Fox News, and other national networks. Long-time Tropical Weather Conference attendees know Austin very well, as he has been attending our conferences and helps film the interviews when we need them. You might also recall that while working for NBC and the Weather Channel, he was picked up and thrown by the El Reno, Oklahoma tornado in May of 2013. So Austin, welcome to the show. It's all yours.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate the intro. And thank you, Alex, for having me on. Well, I wanted to just go over a few things that has busy 2020 hurricane season. I'll go right to the video because I have some clips to show you from different hurricanes that hit the Gulf Coast. Here is a style that I know so well of, if you look up in the right in the Gulf, a lot of times when you're driving into a hurricane zone, evacuation going, and all the traffic is coming away, and I'm by myself going in. So, and we'll just start off here with this video of what it looked like from Navarre, Florida, for Hurricane Sally. This is right by where my room was in the Best Western in Navarre. I just shot this with my cell phone right out the door of my window. And you can see that hurricanes, they build and build and build, as you know, and they we also kind of, as we're going into a storm situation like this, we try to find a hotel or something or elevated area that we can keep the camera dry and still have the meteorologist out in the rain and the wind. And so we chose this one in Navarre, Florida, as Sally was coming in on the sound. And that's okay, because it's a case where a lot of times I need to get a first floor, but then move to the second floor of a ocean or a bayfront hotel. This is a video where I was just talking about how the storm surge is coming into my room. To protect the camera when doing live shots. But of course now in the morning, as the storm surge is coming up out of my door, all the water is just pouring into the room from the sound, and Santa Rosa Sound. Here it comes. So you can see we're gonna need to change rooms. Oh, and power is out, but that's okay. I brought a generator. So I get pretty funny because that's okay, because a lot of times they'll when power goes out, you always need to be prepared. because you need to be able to charge batteries and keep your camera dry and running. My next storm was going back in time to Hurricane Hannah. I've been taking screen grabs of radar with my phone as I get to a location. You see how Hannah was coming off the Texas coast. It was a case where Hannah brushed by but didn't make landfall here. But we still had some damage and some rain. Here's Paul Goodloe by the Bob Hall Pier, where it's a case of the storm surge here was, even though the storm was offshore, didn't make landfall, it was at least 2 and maybe 2.5 feet. The Bob Hall Pier behind Paul there, those sections of concrete were lifted up by the waves and knocked around. And that propane tank behind you got loose, started spewing propane out, and a power line went down. So we decided, oh, wow, we better get off the beach, which we did quickly. And we moved up to a little bit higher ground on the side of the dune as the storm was making its way past Texas here. Now, there's a lot of times, if you notice this car is not parked properly, that's because when we get into a situation and we get out of our cars to go to a place to start broadcasting live, we'll park the cars up on a curb or on a sidewalk or something to higher ground to make sure they don't get flooded out. That's very important because when the storm passes in a few hours, you want to be able to drive away. See how the roads get flooded. So, this is in Fort Lauderdale with another storm that came in, and we had a really nice time here because the storm once again just kind of brushed by Florida, didn't come in, and kept going north. And it gets very windy and waves form, of course, and you have to use sandbags and things to keep your tripod from falling over. And I'm also being able to deliver a return video, which meteorologists really like because they can, out in the field, they can talk about the graphics that are coming up on screen. This is an example of some cover that we found in Texas, where we just talked to a homeowner who had a house right on Matagorda Bay and say, hey, can we use your bottom floor? And they said, what? Oh, sure, okay. Once they understood what we were doing, so I can keep the camera dry and have the reporter out by the waves. So. This is an example of a new thing that the Weather Channel is doing this year, and it's called the Storm Path camera. When I saw how they had made them up, I thought, well, I can make one of those. So I went out and bought a Nest Cam and a tripod and a waterproof box, and set it up with, so it's basically just showing a wide angle, like a GoPro version of the waves that are coming in. And it was really funny because in those waves that I showed you from Navarre, I had tied this Nest Cam with some cable ties to a post by those waves. And as the storm surge came in, the waves got higher, the whole thing the post got ripped off, and not just the Nest Cam itself. Later, a few hours after the storm and the water went down, the next morning, I went out to try to find what was left. The box had disappeared, but the camera was down in the rocks and the waves, and the cable was still attached to the camera. So I salvaged that, and lo and behold, when I got back to Austin, turned it on and it still works. So Reynolds Wolf is a great meteorologist with the Weather Channel. Sometimes in between live shots, he was trying to catch fish. This is in Mandeville, which is on the north side of Lake Pontchartrain. So, and we're in New Orleans a couple of times, even though the storms kept turning and going west of New Orleans. We'd start there and then move as the direction of the storm changed. This is my rental car because I found that I used to take my Suburban into storms, but then things would happen to it. So I started renting Suburbans instead. You see in the back there is like a generator that I'll carry. Sometimes won't even need to use it.
Hey, Austin, are you wanting to share that screen? Because we're looking at just you and your computer in the background. There we go.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, thank you. And so there's a closer up version of the generator that I carry, and sometimes don't even use it. But sometimes, like if you get into a situation where there's power down for 5 weeks, like in Lake Charles after Laura, you sure can use this like that. That's one of the Weather Channel Storm Pass cameras. Sometimes putting it up high, you can put it down low as the waves come in and wash over it. That's a pretty cool shot. So, and this is a thing I made up for IFB. That way, you notice, you probably can't tell in this photo, but this phone has been on that same phone number for 7 hours, and it transmits over to our earpieces. So, and it's run by a camera battery. It's pretty fun. So, and this is in the Golden Nugget in Lake Charles. We found that hotel to be the best one for covering both Laura and Delta, because it was sturdy and recently built, 2014. So. And there's Delta headed our way. So I took a snapshot of that. And here's Laura. Laura's like here in the Gulf gaining strength, and it had some rapid intensification. You see the blue dot up there at the top where I was. And here it is right in the eye where, so I know that 134 mile an hour winds were lashing the hotel where we were. I have a video about that, so I'll play it, and you can hear the howling winds of Laura hitting the hotel, the Golden Nugget.
Well, right now we are experiencing the eye wall of Hurricane Laura hitting the hotel, whistling through the hotel at 40 miles an hour. Outside, the wind is howling at 128 mile an hour gusts. We're still safe inside, but some of the glass may be going.
Wow. What'd y'all think about that?
Now, that was interesting. The sound of the wind was incredible.
Amazing. Yeah, and a lot of people in the lobby there, since it was at night, they were really scared after hearing that. And so it was really amazing, because I was talking about the glass maybe going. Well, not more than 10 minutes after that, the railing on the second story of the hotel got a lot of rocks and debris hit it, and it shattered into a million pieces. And here's a shot of Stephanie Abrams trying to go live in there when the railing gave way. The railings were TWC's.
Oh, yeah.
Taped on there. And so they all came inside for safety. And so here's a short video of the whole team trying to help Stephanie regroup and reestablish her live shot in a safer place after the railing gave way. I'll try to play this. It's kind of fuzzy because I took it off my phone, but I'm on the right there in a black shirt with a camera on my shoulder because I was...
Alex, we're seeing you.
Yeah, right. And I was... we were trying to regroup and reset up there in a parking garage. And you can still hear the wind howling. That was me giving the thumbs up. So that pretty soon the power went out, and so they were using light from their flashlights and things to try to make their way through the building to get to the parking garage where we could still hear the winds howl and see trees falling down and things like that. So. Now, in Hurricane Laura, it did the most damage to Lake Charles compared to Delta. Like a gazebo went down outside of the hotel. And you guys may have remember these TV towers in Lake Charles got knocked over and crumpled. So they were sustained winds of at least 110 with gusts to 135, and that was first out of the north. And you remember that radar picture I was showing you? It was the eye wall was even stronger on the way back, on the backside. So you see behind me there is the building deck. It became kind of like the standard bearer for what happened to Lake Charles, because this is the Capital One building that lost so much glass. And this is the First Baptist Church. All of this here was just as the backside of the Laura came through, it was hitting this concrete and stained glass, causing a pile of rubble there that had stood for 70 years. Now we can switch over here to Sally. We started out, I went back to Austin and then back over to Sally in Florida. And this is remembering back to my first video in my room. This is at the Best Western in Navarre, where the storm surge was coming over the top of the grounds of the hotel. And I found a place kind of tucked in behind a wall and next to the pool deck where we could still see the waves crashing over in the rain. And so then I was able to keep the camera protected, but yet have the reporter out in the rain. I think it's important. A lot of people complain about, oh, why should a reporter be out there? But if a meteorologist is able to talk about the strength of a storm, it makes a much more meaningful and important point to show the rain and wind hitting the meteorologist out in the field. And you see how that we're on the lee side of this wall, and the camera's up against the wall under a cover, and the rain is around the corner, which used to be my hotel room. So it was important to me to have that room, even if we weren't using it after it flooded, because we could stand there in front of it. And I think rain gear is important, both camera and person. For example, there's a lot to be said for something that when you're out in the elements like this for 5-6 hours straight in the wind and you're drenched in sopping wet, you can get really cold. So I've developed a really good system of rain gear that is keeps me dry mostly and also comfortable. And it's got Gore-Tex in it, in a hood, and I'll wear a couple of layers under that that are polypropylene or something, but not cotton. I've given up on even cotton underwear. So, and the sound, Santa Rosa Sound, really took the brunt of Hurricane Sally and flooded Navarre Beach by about 4 feet. There was a rescue that we made. I think I have a picture of that where you can see how the storm surges rolled over the at the top of this picture is the area where we were filming from, and this is some video too. And so why they left those Adirondack chairs out, I don't know. They got knocked around quite a bit. So the next morning after the storm cleared, we went over to Devar Beach where we heard about some residents being trapped in their homes. And as we went over the causeway to Navarre Beach from Navarre, and as we stopped, right behind us was the Coast Guard with a rescue van and a trailer. The water on the road was shallow enough to where they didn't want to put their boats in the water, but there was a neighborhood back in Navarre Beach that was flooded. All the homes were flooded. There was some people that didn't evacuate because they didn't understand, according to the models, that Sally was going to be as bad as it was because of rapid intensification this year. And so what happened was I ran up to the lieutenant and said, hey, how about you take us along with to Navarre Beach to see about this neighborhood with the people? And at first he was reluctant, but then I said, it'll make y'all look good. And so he said, okay. So he drove into the road. We had to sit in the back of the pickup truck, and they loaded up the people who were in danger on this big high lift trailer and brought them out. They were so thankful and grateful because they didn't expect the water to come up that fast and flood their homes. And this is after the water has gone down, where they're just cleaning up and squeegeeing out. A lot of our stories are not just covering the storm as it happens, but stories about what has happened, what have the people fared. I think more interesting stories occur as people are reacting to the disaster that has occurred in front of them, and they've had to go through it. And so it's more emotional. Let's see, this is Delta. Oh, so we went back, and now we're in the Greek alphabet. So we went back to Lake Charles after Laura and Sally. And here's Delta trying to make its way up into Lake Charles, starting out, of course, again in New Orleans, but then moving back over to Lake Charles. So this is Tevin Wooten. He's a fine up-and-coming meteorologist for the Weather Channel who is really sharp and I like the way he talks about meteorology in his live shots. So, and we were, this is interesting too, because if you look, this is a rooftop of a hotel. So we are using the skyline of New Orleans instead of waves crashing, because say the night before a storm, we don't have waves crashing yet, but we still need a good angle for a locator. And that worked out well there on the rooftop of this hotel. That's a daytime version of it, because sometimes we go from morning, it's still dark, to morning where it's light. You change your audio and change the lighting around. And now this is a case where we went to a neighborhood where some homes that had been damaged for Laura had been rebuilding, including a roof that was flat, but now they made it angled, and it held during Laura. Laura knocked it down, and then they came back with after 5 weeks. They just got power, and then they got hit again by Delta, and so they lost power again. So, you see this pile of rubble in front of this house, and that's a case where this pile of rubble was still there, 5 weeks later between Laura and Delta. That pile of rubble was from flooded homes. They had taken sheetrock out and furniture and piled it up on these houses in Lake Charles. They had, the city had tried to go around and collect it all, but then Delta hit so fast that they didn't have time to pull it all out. So they were really worried as Delta was coming in, it was going to start blowing all this debris around. And it did pretty well, but otherwise it just got wet, piles of stinking wet sheetrock again. So, and a lot of times when you're doing live shots out in the weather, you can use the back of your rented Suburban, the hitch lift, to keep your camera protected, which is what I'm doing here. That's important because even just 10, 20 minutes out in a heavy tropical rainstorm, even with the best camera cover, water will get in there and start fogging up your lens or something. So you have to it's important to keep it protected. So in between live shots, I may run it back into the car or run it back under the cover of the lift gate. Sometimes I'll break off the tripod and follow Tevin around, showing the debris and things like that. But in a heavy, heavy rain, you need to just be safe, because if your camera goes down, your live shots are down and you're not working anymore. I bring 2 cameras with me just as a backup in case. You can see more debris piles that were left from sitting there for 5 weeks. And this is the aftermath. And if you look back in the back past that bright light, there are blue tarps. At least 1,000 homes still have their blue tarps from Laura. And during Delta, they were all worried that the tarps are going to blow off, and many did. Toward the right side of your screen, if you look toward the camera and our live set, there's a tarp that's down that got blown off from Delta. And this neighborhood flooded again. And so that's why we were going live from here after the storm had passed. Let's see, now we're on to, that's Ada. Yeah, went to Florida for that, and there were 2 landfalls there. This is starting out before the storm came, where I'm once again using cover at the hotel. And this is Marathon Key, was a town called Key Colony. We stopped there, and then the next morning we're sent on to Key West as the storm started veering a little bit more west. But we started out in Key Colony in Marathon. In Ada, we were reporting from morning to mid-morning. And and then as the storm approached, the closest to Key West was here on the beach, down in Key West. And you see that where I am as the camera operator is, and the rain behind me is a case where I was using the lee side of the hotel, where the rain was blowing over the top of the roof and past me, and then hitting the meteorologist back there. So, and then after Ada passed, there was a lot of flooding up in Fort Lauderdale. So driving back north, we stopped and we're following this information on Twitter about this neighborhood that was still flooded. So we went down there, and sure enough, people were still stuck in their homes for 3 days after the storm passed. And to find stories like this, it really puts a face on a case for covering the aftermath, not just the storm itself and the blowing wind and the rain, but what happened to the people here. And in this case, this lady was 80 years old, and she had been stuck there because there was 2 feet of water across the street and in her yard. This is her front yard. And so she really couldn't go anywhere, and she felt stranded, and she didn't want to call for help. And the way that my philosophy is on finding these kinds of stories to tell is be prepared to get in there and just walk up to people. For example, this lady, when I was walking down the street with my waders on, saw her just sitting there on her porch. And I yelled over from here saying, "Hey, what's happening with you?" She said, and she started telling me about the flooding issues of Fort Lauderdale, how they didn't clean the gutters and the streets and things. And so I said, "Hey, can I come talk to you about it?" And she said, "Well, okay." And so then I just waded up very carefully. You see my waders on under here. And because of COVID, we're using a boom mic to keep our distance and a mask on. And so then I just got permission to shoot B-roll around her house and in her house. And so I made a really nice story to tell because she could describe the whole thing kind of like in her own words.
Austin, did you rescue the cat that was on the roof of that lady's house?
Yeah. So that cat was kind of, when he saw me approaching, was over there behind her, and he walked over to get a closer look, but just leaning over, checking me out. And I imagine the cat was up on the roof for a few days because her but call there. There's also the effects, like in Ada, the second landfall. There was we had moved up the coast, the west side of Florida, and had about a day and a half to do that. And I was looking on the National Weather Service projected path and thought, you know, we really need to, you know, even though we're in Fort Lauderdale, we need to go up around toward Tampa. And so we took the 4 or 5 hours to get up there to test Tampa. And sure enough, the storm came in about 120 miles north of Tampa and Cedar Key. Meanwhile, the impacts substantial there in Cincinnati because they've had a 600% increase in people that have moved in the last 50 years, and they're not used to having a hurricane hit that side of the state. So it really turned into be more like a story of aftermath and what it did as the bay rolled into some of these neighborhoods that are surrounding Clearwater, Tampa, and even St. Petersburg. And so it took only a couple of, maybe 4 hours for the storm to go by. We were live during that time under a cover from Clearwater, but then went out in the next shift that we had of 4 hours of live shots, found this neighborhood where people had homes had gone underwater, which made really compelling emotional TV because they were just shocked that the storm had caused this issue. They were saying, oh, well, it already made landfall down in Fort Lauderdale, Key West area, so it took a lot of punch out, but it had time to really strengthen as it got back into the Gulf. And so we were able to find this neighborhood and start talking to people and explain what had happened, how they didn't expect it to come into their homes, and they were surprised how fast the water rose. And so just told all these stories. And this is just my rental car with a bunch of luggage, because most of the time I drive to around the Gulf Coast to get to places because I can take extra stuff. In this case, I don't have a generator because we can't fly with one, of course. And so you see there's not as much gear in there, but I checked all that luggage with Southwest to Tampa, and man, it was like $225 in baggage fees. So this poor guy had a Corvette and a brand new Harley he had just bought, and the water was coming up around his house. So he was talking about that. And that's my last picture is just a beautiful sunset from Key West, because I find that in covering hurricanes, there's a lot of beauty that can be shown besides the devastation and destruction. So, and that's what I have for my photos there, Alex. So I can open it up for questions if you have any questions.
Oh, yeah.
Great. That's just fascinating. You're from the behind the scenes view of how this is done. One question that came to me was, what's your exit strategy for the cases where things start to go seriously wrong on you as a storm approaches?
That's a great question because we always make one, Bill, and that's a case where you have to look and see. Okay, like that hotel room that we had was there in Navarre, right on the water. We had planned to evacuate back to, say, the Hampton Inn up the road, which is another 4 feet in elevation. I always check for what's highest. And in Key West, as you know, is so low everywhere. We had to figure out where the highest ground was before the storm ever got there. And so our evacuation strategy was to go to the high school in Key West. So I drove over there to check it out. And it turns out, and this is very interesting that they do this in Key West, they all know that the parking lot of the high school in Key West is the highest ground on the island. So there were about 300 cars parked in the parking lot of the Key West High School.
Wow. Uh, you alluded to the fact that you've lost some equipment to storms. Have you lost a lot of equipment over the years, or is that just one of those occupational hazards you have to deal with?
Oh, yeah, it really is. One good example is in, for example, like in, I guess it was Fort Lauderdale, a wind gust blew my camera over. And I was just like beside myself because I usually am so protective of my camera. And I usually have a sandbag on it. And I turned to say something to somebody, and a wind gust just right then knocked it over. And it went down. I had about maybe 5 minutes before the next live shot. And so I had to think fast, but because the camera wouldn't turn on. And because I carried that second camera backup with me, ran back through the hotel, got the camera, turned it on, was running back out to the beach, and got it focused, plugged the cable in, and just in the nick of time, and we didn't miss the live shot. But that's, I guess, to answer your question, very much so like an occupational hazard with gear is keeping it protected and having a backup.
Mm-hmm. Do you carry insurance on that, or is it too costly to be worth it?
I think we may have lost him there.
Got a frozen picture. Yeah, the internet connection's been showing off and on.
Yeah. We got you, Austin.
What was that question, though?
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, I'm here.
Do you carry insurance on your equipment, or is that too costly to be viable?
Oh, no. Yeah, I do carry insurance and an annual payment. I have a lot of gear that I insure for theft and damage. And so it's a blessing to have that, and you really need it covering hurricanes. Side note, when I'm renting a car from, say, Enterprise or Hertz or Budget, a lot of times they'll ask me, do you need the insurance? I said, yes, all of it.
Yeah. I thought it fascinating that you find the golden nuggets the best places for riding out the storms. And on the lighter side, were there any hardcore gamblers still playing the slots while the storm was approaching, or did they shut it down?
They did. Yeah, good question. They did shut it down, which was interesting. Little factoid. At the Golden Nugget, they had built wooden barricades around all entrances to the slot area, but they left it all powered up. And the whole way through the storm, even that howling wind, the slot machines were working and on. So I went to the front desk curious about that, and they said, oh yeah, we have to have a big generator to keep everything going on the casino floor, because if those slot machines go down, it's millions of dollars to reprogram them.
Whoa.
So I thought, well, that's good to know, because if they got a generator here at the Golden Nugget, then we'll be okay with elevators and other things.
Wonderful. Yeah. I had just one more comment. I want to reiterate your point about post-storm impact coverage. It's really important. we talk a lot as the storm approaches about what's going to happen, and sometimes it's hard to get reports from the impacted areas of just what has happened there. And I really find those highly useful. Alex, did you field any questions?
Oh
Well,
yeah,
and especially now that
I've got a few there. The big thing for me is the lighting. I mean, you're out there in the dark. What are you using specifically to light up that scene?
Oh, that's a great question. Let me explain that with a picture. Um, like, I'll see if I can stop on one of my photos. Okay, this would be a good example. So, a lot of photographers will use panel lights with plastic wrapped around them to keep them waterproof. And I find that doesn't work very well because there's a lot of surface area in the wind that these lights get blown over. And so I found this light here, there at the National Tropical Weather Conference in the display one day by Fox Fury. And it has been working great because this light, for example, is all battery powered, has its own stand, and it's a small light head that puts out a lot of light. And it'll go about 3.5 hours. So it'll withstand 40, 50 mile an hour winds with its own tripod because the surface area of the head of the light is so small, which I really like. So, and I had one light blow over just on Edda in Clearwater, and it smacked the ground so hard it just blew apart. But not these Fox Fury Nomads. They just stay up, and I may throw, if it's 60 mile an hour winds, may throw a sandbag on it or something. But those panel lights are just too much surface area, and they get knocked around and blown over.
Yeah, they're sort of like little wings out there. Had a question from Casper. He says, how much extra weight does all that photography equipment add when you're mobilizing coverage like that?
The with the baggage fees of what I mentioned and the extra weight of all this gear, it's really difficult to move around. It's probably 400 or 500 pounds of equipment, and it's a case where a lot of times even having an extra hand in a hurricane is needed, like a sound guy that can help you lug this gear around. Most of the weight and the gear you have is, besides tripod and light stands and lights, is batteries, battery chargers, because sometimes you may need to be able to go live for a couple of hours on just battery alone, not have power. And so the weight is something to consider because you're bringing enough gear. I think I've seen some photographers that have just gone with one little Frezzi light over the camera. And what happens there is the meteorologist's face is lit fine, but there's no definition, and everything behind him is dark, him or her, because you can't light up the background. So you need light on the background and light on the reporter's face.
So that's where those Fox Fury lights really come in handy then. If you've got a big bright area that you can light up with them, it gives you a little definition there on the background when you're trying to light these scenes.
That's exactly right. And I've been able to, like on the Fort Lauderdale beach, light up the waves. You're pretty far away, and so here's an example of all the gear that I'll roll with. That Fox Fury light is this tube on the top that opens up with its own stand, and it's real hard, firm plastic. And so but without being able to light up the background, it's really like you could be anywhere. Like if you say we're in Fort Lauderdale Beach, wow, I can't see that unless you brought enough light to light it up. So, and one more thing, Alex, that when you're trying to light up waves or water, that's like a black hole out there.
Very much so. Very much so. Uh, Tell us a little bit more about that Nest Cam setup that you put together. That looked very interesting.
Oh yeah, it's really cool. And let me see if I can pull that picture back up. It's a case where the engineers at the Weather Channel thought it up, and so it's a case where what they did was take a hotspot, a modem, and they basically connected that in a waterproof box to the Nest Cam to provide 5 volts for the camera to power it. And then the hotspot's providing a Wi-Fi source. And then there's a like a battery, like you would help supplement the power for your cell phone. And it would be a case where it'll go maybe 5 or 6 hours just eating up data off of that hotspot. And so I went ahead and have been paying $50 a month for that for Verizon for the data, and it'll do like 6 gigabytes, and I can probably use up that much in 2 storms, maybe three gigs per storm because you leave it up for so long. And it's kind of weird because the instructions you get with the Nest camera is all about putting it on the wall of your house or in a window or something and hooking up to your home Wi-Fi. So when you get to a location, you have to reprogram it with your hotspot in the box that it's remind it when you plug it back in that, oh, you're going to be taking the internet source, the Wi-Fi from the hotspot that's in the waterproof box. And it was pretty funny. I never found this box after that pole got broken off there in Navarre, getting hit by the waves. So, or the battery that was powering it.
So
So
everything
luckily,
just kind of got blown away. Huh?
yeah, floated away somewhere in that. But the hotspots is stayed intact because it's waterproof, made to put on the side of your wall of your house.
Yeah. That was very
And
interesting, just to get that going.
yeah,
Now, one other thing, and we're getting some questions here. Since you're out there and you have no power, what kind of batteries are you working with once you're out there like that? Because you're all on battery power, right?
all on battery for 4 or 5 hours. Yeah, and it's been a challenge, but I found one Anton Bauer that's like 200 watt, 201, and it'll power the camera for about 4 hours. The live view unit itself will last about 4 hours, and then I made an adapter for that that I can use a camera battery to power the live view. And so it'll be a case where maybe the camera batteries that I bring are pretty beefy. Not, I mean, they're big camera battery size, and so also the case with the lights, since they last about 3.5, I have to go out and turn them off in between live shots to save battery.
Yeah, I could understand that. One last thing, we saw your little IFB unit. Tell us a little bit more about that. And IFB is, for those of you who are outside of the media business, that's what we listen to. We plug into our ear to listen to the producers back at the station giving us instructions. Tell us a little bit about that unit you put together.
Yeah, I'm using another camera battery, so it'll last all day. And I found a little adapter, a D-tap on the side of the battery that changes things to 5 volts. So you can plug in the phone to this camera battery and the transmitter. And a lot of people use Electrosonics R1As for receivers and transmitters. I find that takes too much power over time. And so I've been using Voca Pros, and they will last for like 2 days on a couple of AA's, and they really are great. So I can, and they're cheap. So if I hand a box to a reporter with his to plug in his earpiece, running those AA's will last all day, and they can put it in their jacket pocket in a Ziploc bag, and it'll stay relatively dry. I did lose one receiver one time and took it apart and it was all rusty inside. So I dried it out and with a blow dryer, and the next day it came on, so it worked again. So,
Yeah.
and it's about $100 instead of $300 or $500 for the electrosonics.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Bill, do you have any further questions?
Oh, that was just fascinating. Look at how you do that. I'm amazed that the equipment holds up as well as it does, and the people.
Yeah, and the people, right? Mhm. Yeah, when I'm getting stung in the face like BBs with horizontal rain, and rain's pouring down the side of my rain jacket, and it's cold, and I'm thinking, do I enjoy this? I said, yeah, it's fun and challenging and defeating the elements.
Yeah. Did you find yourself getting what we call hurricane fatigue with all the activity this year?
A lot of my coworkers were complaining about that, but I was enjoying it because as a freelancer, the more work, the better, as far as I'm concerned, is I can keep working, especially during the COVID times, because a lot of my friends and out there in the field, they're not working. And with I'd say the hurricane season of 2020 being a COVID year, during a pandemic, it kept a lot of us freelance cameramen working.
Huh. There's always a plus side to everything that seems bad.
Yeah. Well, but also it was very important to stay healthy because anytime we may get exposed to that disastrous virus, you wouldn't be able to work again.
Right.
So I was taking a lot of precautions. I implemented my own personal protocols, staying in hotels that are clean and not a lot of people, and not eating in restaurants, being outside, going through drive-throughs and things like that.
Yeah. Good points.
Oh, and I didn't go to bars.
That's good for a number of reasons.
This is true.
Yeah, right.
What was your
Eat all
most
the
challenging
street food you
setup
can
out there? Of all these hurricanes, what was your most challenging setup?
I think the most challenging was trying to go live with the storm surge and the waves crashing and rain there in Sally on Navarre. Because the rain was blowing so horizontal, it's rain jackets on cameras are made for rain that's coming straight down. And in this case, the most challenging was it's blowing sideways for hours and hours.
All right. Well, I guess if we have no more further questions, let me double check here and see if we've got any more coming in. I don't see any here. Bill, have you got any more?
No, sir.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you very much, Austin. Thank you, Bill, for being a part of this great show today. It's a different one that we've done, Austin. We usually just talk to hurricane experts that are out in front of the camera or out forecasting, and now we're getting a little different scene from you behind the camera, and it gives people a little bit better idea of what actually goes on when they're watching the Weather Channel cut-ins like that, and the rest of us. It takes a lot to really make it happen. And thanks so much for being part of the program this morning.
Thank you, Alex.
Want to remind everyone that
you having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Want to remind everyone that we are sponsored by USAA and South Padre Island Convention and Tourist Bureau and Plilax Hurricane Clips. Without them, we could not have this program. We've got one more program coming up for this hurricane season. Next week, we are going to do our hurricane wrap-up season. Of course, it'll be Mark Sudduth and Hal Needham and Bill Reed, Tim Smith, and I. And we'll be talking about the hurricane season as it is. After that, we'll take a break. So be sure and join us next week for that program. We're in the close.